Welcome to the Sunday Suitcase podcast, where we prove that great legal minds and great health go hand in hand. Each week, your host, Alex Ramirez, will be bringing you weekly doses of fitness inspiration, wellness wisdom, and real stories from legal professionals who made health a priority. So get ready to energize your legal career from the inside out.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Suitcase. Today, we're going to spend some time unpacking the findings from the 2024 Attorney Wellbeing Report that was published by Bloomberg Law. If you haven't had the chance to read it, I recommend you do. I posted a link in the comment section so you can go check it out on your own when you have time. It's a really interesting report. It takes a deep dive into how lawyers are feeling, not just mentally and physically, but also emotionally, and why there's often such a disconnect between what we say matters to us and the choices that we end up making every day. It's a really interesting report, and I just kind of wanted to go through some of the things that I found particularly interesting, given the fact that I spend so much time talking about health and wellness on LinkedIn. So the first thing I noticed was that a lot of attorneys rated the importance of their well-being within their career at an 8.7 out of 10, which doesn't really sound terrible, except that many of those attorneys still feel just okay about their overall health. And younger lawyers in particular reported even lower scores, something around about a 5.6 out of 10, which again, I think is pretty interesting that you have the younger attorneys scoring even lower when they are relatively new to the profession. So maybe that's something that is reflective of the law school experience. I know for a lot of people, the burnout starts to creep in during law school. And I guess for some of us, it just extends to the rest of our career. Another thing I thought was interesting was that 4 in 10 attorneys said that their well-being has stayed the same, while 1 in 4 felt it actually declined. And burnout was obviously and unsurprisingly to anyone, was one of the biggest factors, with a lot of attorneys feeling burnt out nearly half the time that they're at work. And I think a lot of us can probably relate to that. And I think some of us have gotten to the point where being burnt out and performing while we're burnt out has become the norm, to the point where I don't think half the time we realize how burnt out we are, because it feels normal to constantly work stressed out or anxious or just, in this constant state of stress. They also took the time to break this down by gender, and the challenges became even more apparent. The female attorneys were reporting that their well-being had worsened at a higher rate than their male counterparts. And attorneys with children under the age of 18 at home, that's me, also faced higher burnout rates at a rate of 50% compared to 46% for those without children, which is kind of interesting. The percentages really aren't that far off. But still, again, something that we need to, obviously we need to break down and look at, because I think for female attorneys, especially for those of us who do have children, there's not only the stress from work, but also the stress of our family situations at home, dealing with the kids and school and doctor's appointments and things like that. And I think the other thing that I didn't see this in the report, but something that also does need to be considered is for those who don't have children, there's also additional responsibilities at home that maybe they're not taking into account in these surveys. So I know I have a lot of friends who, even though they don't have children, they are the caretakers for maybe a spouse, maybe their parents, or someone else in their life. And so that also adds on to the stress. And I think, some of the challenges that contributed to these numbers were really, really interesting. Like half reported trouble focusing on work tasks. 45% of attorneys said they struggled to just disconnect from work, which I'm assuming is something that a lot of us, myself included, who work from home, that's another layer of complexity to add where basically your home is your office. For me, I've set up my walk-in closet. Half of it is my office, and it's upstairs. It's connected to our bedroom. So every time I walk past it, I'm reminded of work because my laptop is in here, like my work stuff is in here. So it's kind of difficult to fully disconnect because I feel like I'm constantly at work, basically. But I will say this though, I'm a huge remote work proponent, especially because of my situation at home. So that is on me to figure out how to disconnect. Other issues that were listed, including feelings of sadness, anxiety about world events, imposter syndrome, and just unmanageable workloads, which I think a lot of us, again, can relate to. 26% reported feeling lonely and isolated, and a third struggled to find meaning or purpose in their lives. This one I found very interesting because I know I've spoken about this before, but I think a lot of us go into the profession with this mindset that we're going to save the world and we're going to make a huge difference. And, for a lot of us that we end up taking a different turn. We end up doing other things that maybe make us feel like we're not aligned with what we're meant to do. Which is, again, I think something that most of us just push aside for the sake of just, we need to get through today. We need to get through our workload. And we don't really stop and give that a lot of thought. But again, something else that I thought was interesting and was mentioned here, the report also highlighted a mix of healthy and not so healthy coping mechanisms for a lot of lawyers. 71% of attorneys did say that they do turn to hobbies like hiking, reading, going to sporting events, and exercising regularly, which is great. But then fewer than half of the attorneys talked about therapy or counseling. And I think this is something that in our profession is sometimes frowned upon. I don't know why, honestly, because I think it's, for some people, it's pretty much the only way to get through. There's nothing wrong with it. I think, for a lot of people, they need it. It's their escape. It's a way to have someone validate that what they're feeling is not normal in a way, but also that they're entitled to feel that way. Another interesting fact was the mention of alcohol. They talked about how it does play a notable role, with 87% of attorneys surveyed mentioning that they did have alcohol this year, and 25% reporting consumption levels above the recommended limit. Many of them said that they drink to relax, socialize. For some, it was just a way to cope with stress and emotional changes. I know for a fact that obviously in our profession, this is something that's often talked about. So, interesting that it was also captured there. Another kind of troubling finding that was mentioned is how often, as attorneys, we delay or avoid seeking help. And super interesting to me because my previous episode talked about physical therapy and how I avoided it for a very long time because I didn't think I needed it. And now I don't know how the heck I got through without it. But this seems to be an ongoing theme for our profession. We delay mental health treatments because of time. And over 70% of attorneys said that they just couldn't fit it into their schedules, which I think says a lot about how we're spending our time and our workloads, that not even having the time to take care of ourselves when it's needed, time becomes a barrier for self-care. And some attorneys reporting that the reason they didn't go to therapy wasn't due to time, but that they felt that they could handle the issues on their own, which is also another mindset that is really common in our profession and obviously not always very productive. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting article. It's a really interesting survey of our profession. I think, we say that we value our well-being, but our actions don't always reflect it. And we have to stop and really take the time to think about what the root cause of our burnout is. I think it's easy for us to go through the day and just blame it on, well, I had these many contracts to deal with today, or half the household is sick, or I'm tired, I haven't slept. And we associate it with like one specific event versus taking a broader look at our entire environment. Like, what are the things that little by little are adding on to your stress, instead of, again, just pinpointing one thing? Because a lot of times what we're doing, at least in my case, is I'll have a week of where my workload is just ridiculous. And my mindset is, well, that's why I feel tired this week. That's why I'm burnt out, because I had a ton of stuff to do. But then the week ends and my burnout doesn't necessarily go away. It just rolls into the next week. And I have learned how to function in burnout stage, which is not healthy. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has done this, but it's become my norm. Like, I often think about like what it must feel like to function without burnout and without feeling stressed. I feel like at a certain point in my life, it became normal for me, and I don't know how to function any other way. So again, I'm sure there's a lot of us that probably feel that way. And I think, again, taking the time to just try and figure out what the root cause is or causes, because it could be more than one thing, and trying to find ways to address them instead of, just living with them and making them the norm, because they really shouldn't be. I think we need to, ask ourselves, like, are there things that better align with our actions, with our values? Is there a way that we can tweak our habits, not just for the day, but for the week, for the year, in order to start moving away from that burnout state? I think this report, honestly, is a huge wake-up call, but it's really also an opportunity for us to commit to making well-being a priority. Like, it's not just something we talk about, it really should be something we act on. And you have to remember, the better you take care of yourself, the better you show up for not just you, but for your clients, your colleagues, your family. And I think it's something that we often, we often set aside, again, because other things take priority. If you have the time to read the report again, I highly recommend it. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you prioritize your well-being? How many of you have normalized working and functioning being burnt out? Like, has that become your go-to, your normal? Again, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. If you have a chance, read the report and leave me your thoughts. I really would like to kind of hear what other people have to say about it. That's pretty much all I had for this week. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I hope not a lot of burnout occurs and that you do have some time to take care of yourselves. Bye.